I kicked my husband's mom out on Christmas Day, and I don't regret it. She'd been making comments about my kids since the day they were born. Not obviously. Never obviously. Just this consistent, quiet drip of observations delivered with a smile that made you feel like you were imagining things if you reacted. That my son Jake was a bit slow for his age. That my daughter Rosie was too clingy, and I was making it worse by indulging her. That children needed more discipline than I provided, and she could see it. I'd absorbed all of it for 4 years because my husband Dan would say, "That's just how she is," and I loved him, and I kept choosing peace over the conversation I actually needed to have. Christmas morning started fine. Sandra arrived at 11 with gifts and that specific energy she brought to occasions where she had an audience. Dan's brother and his wife were there. My sister had come. 12 people around a table I'd spent 2 days preparing. The kids were electric the way kids are on Christmas morning, loud and happy and completely themselves. Jake is 7 and had been awake since 5. Rosie is 5 and had worn her Christmas dress since breakfast. Sandra started during the starter. Rosie knocked her juice over reaching for the bread, and Sandra made a sound, this sharp intake of breath, and said, "Honestly, that child has no coordination at all. She's 5 years old and still can't manage a cup." Dan looked at his plate. I looked at Rosie, who had gone bright red and was trying not to cry into her Christmas dress. I cleaned it up without saying anything. I told Rosie it was fine. I kept going. During the main course, Jake started telling a story about something that had happened at school and got muddled in the middle the way kids do. And Sandra said, "Poor thing, he really does struggle to express himself, doesn't he? Some children are just not naturally articulate." She said it across the table to Dan's brother like Jake wasn't sitting right there. Like he wasn't 7 years old and listening to his grandmother tell a room full of people he was lacking. Jake stopped talking mid-sentence. He looked at me. That specific look children give you when they need you to do something and don't have the words to ask for it. I put my fork down. I told Sandra I needed her to hear me clearly. The table went quiet. Dan said my name once. I told him I'd heard him and kept going. I told Sandra that Rosie was 5 and knocked things over because she was 5 and that was completely normal. That Jake was articulate and funny and had been telling me that story for a week and I'd listened every time. That I'd been sitting at this table for 4 years listening to her find the things my children were proudest of and quietly dismantle them, and I was done. She could leave the table or leave the house, but she wasn't doing it again today. Sandra said she was only being honest and that children needed to hear the truth about their limitations. I told her my children's limitations were none of her business and that honesty without kindness was just cruelty with better branding. She looked at Dan. Dan looked at me and then at his mom and said, "Mom, I think you should go." She left 20 minutes later after a long silent process of gathering her things and making sure everyone could see how wronged she felt. At the door, she told me I'd ruined Christmas. I told her Rosie had stopped crying and Jake had gone back to his story, and that was the only Christmas I was interested in. Dan's brother and his wife stayed. My sister caught my eye across the table and said nothing, but her face said everything. We had Christmas dinner and it was loud and good, and Jake finished his story and everyone laughed at the right part. Dan found me in the kitchen later that night and said he was sorry it had taken him 4 years to say something himself. I told him he said it when it mattered. Sandra hasn't called to apologize. I don't expect her to. Subscribe for more stories. Muds.